How are borders established? And how is it that some nations get landlocked? This was Bolivia way back when. You see? Mountains, plains, and access to the ocean. Well, imagine that suddenly the whole country gets denied access to its own sea, crippling your trade, fishing, and all kinds of economic activities and access to resources. Bolivia once had 400 kilometers of coastline in the Atacama Desert, but today they have none. Today Bolivia looks like this. You see this small piece of the map? Well, that was annexed by Chile after the so-called War of the Pacific between 1879 and 1884. A war that began after a tariff dispute when the Chilean oligarchs, backed by British companies, didn't want to pay taxes to Bolivia. These businessmen essentially told the state to go to war, and so they did. The results were tens of thousands dead and wounded, all because of a 10-cent tax per quintal of salt. The real winner? British businessman John Thomas North, who held a monopoly of nitrate rail transport, water supply, and several mining industries, becoming known as the King of Nitrates. After the war, both countries signed an agreement in 1904, but Bolivia says it's signed under duress and should not be regarded as binding. Since then, Bolivia has remained landlocked. When Chile's socialist president Salvador Allende was elected, he promised to resolve the issue and give Bolivia sovereign access, but he was overthrown and killed. Talks were held between the military governments, but nothing came of it. Different rounds of negotiations since then failed to produce an agreement, so Bolivian President Evo Morales decided to go to The Hague. Not having sea access has been a major impediment to the development of the country, which has for a long time remained among the poorest in the region. It's estimated that if the country had not been stripped of the sea, the annual GDP growth could be at least 20% higher. And since then, the country is forced to rely on roadway infrastructure for commercial transportation. Quick fact, Bolivia was rated as having the second worst transportation infrastructure in the continent, with only 7.1% of roads being paved. In March 2018, hearings are taking place at the International Court of Justice that could end 130 years of conflict between these neighboring countries, which could be a major development for this little country that was robbed of its sun, sand, and sea.